How's it going, everybody? Jackson Fuller here, and you are listening to the latest episode of Hoggin the Mic. Of course, a podcast covering the Arkansas Razorbacks. And we've got three big time stories to discuss this week, this Monday, the end of basketball season, the beginning of life in the SEC for the baseball team, and another week of spring practice from the football team to recap. They're off for spring break this week, but we got another two practices that the media were able to watch. So plenty of football nuggies that we can drop maybe here on the podcast. It's an exciting time in Fayetteville, especially now that the basketball season is officially over and we can move our eyes over to the portal and we can transfer our eyes to the transfer portal and focus on next year for the Arkansas basketball team. But let's dive in. Enough of me talking. Let's bring in Hutch, play that rock music, and start the latest episode of Hoggin the Mic. Hutch, how's it going, man? Are you filling out a bracket this year with Arkansas not involved? Are you abstaining? Are you protesting? Any lower levels of excitement for March Madness with Arkansas, or a little bit more excitement? You get to be a neutral this year, a little bit more.
I mean, from a fan perspective, it's nice just because, as you said, like I'm not having to worry about covering the Arkansas game. I can flip around and watch whichever game is coming down to the last second, and I think that makes it fun. I haven't filled out a bracket yet. I haven't had a chance to really observe the bracket. I think it came out while we were at Baum Stadium yesterday covering baseball, so haven't had a chance to really look at it yet. But I'm looking forward to filling it out and doing a bracket contest with maybe you and some of the other guys in the media, maybe my family. So it should be a fun time.
Yeah, I've got on my calendar go to coffee shop and fill out bracket this afternoon. So I'm very much looking forward to. I also haven't filled out a bracket yet. Of course, one team not in the bracket are the Arkansas Razorbacks. The men's basketball team fell to South Carolina on Thursday, I believe, in the second round of the SEC tournament. Can't believe that was just days ago. Feels like it was weeks or months ago, just based off everything that's going on in the Arkansas sports world. We need to say they beat Vanderbilt in overtime in the first on Wednesday, and that probably should have been a pretty good indication that the run was going to come to an end soon. That they still couldn't create much separation between themselves and Vanderbilt. So, Hutch, just overall, let's take a really broad approach right now. Just overall, what's kind of your lasting take on this season as a whole? Obviously disappointment, but where do you think things went wrong, and how can Arkansas maybe fix those things as we head into the off season right now?
Yeah, I think I'll remember this year as just being a year of guys not being what we thought they were going to be. I mean, Tremont Mark was a lot better than maybe expected, but everyone else kind of fell short of expectations. I mean, Devo Davis regressed. Trevor in Brazil didn't. I mean, there were flashes of where looked like he was going to be the superstar we thought he was, and it just never really came to fruition. Obviously, he missed some time with an injury. Ellis played better down the stretch, but for the most part did not live up to the hype. It was just a lot of things that did not go like we thought they were going to go, and I think it all contributed to them falling well short of their top 25 expectations heading into the season.
Yeah, it's a good way to start, because I think it leads me to my PSA that I teased right before we hopped on about the transfer portal today, Monday, March 18th. I think the transfer portal is officially open today for basketball. I just would like a PSA to all Arkansas fans. Remember your level of excitement last year with all the transfer additions. And just remember that and how it went, how this year played out when we're, sifting through it this year. Let's not overreact, because I think the biggest takeaway for me this year is the transfer portal is, while you can completely turn around a team and redo a roster and get yourself in position to make an NCAA tournament in one off season, it's not a slam dunk. Even with a coach like Eric Musselman, who John Rothstein calls the importer, who is a terrific talent evaluator, is kind of what he's been known for in getting guys to campus and everything. It just didn't work out this year, and I think if Musselman stays at Arkansas for 20 years and continues to do this strategy of kind of a brand new roster every year, hey, I think you're going to see a lot, not a lot more years like this, but these years are going to pop up every once in a while, however often, just based off how difficult it is to evaluate talent and bring in the right blend of guys chemistry wise, because it's clear something was off this year with the team from a chemistry standpoint, too.
Yeah, and I think I saw a stat. I can't remember what the exact stat was, but it was like teams with at least 7 transfers that brought in 7 players from the transfer portal this past offseason. None of the high major teams that did it, made the NCAA tournament. I think it was Arkansas, Memphis, St. John's, some other teams too. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they all struggled, because of that. I think maybe New Mexico, for the Mountain West, had quite a few transfers, and obviously they made the NCAA tournament. But other than that, I mean, teams that had that much, kind of, I mean, I don't know if a turnover is the right word, but like that much, reliance on the portal, they didn't have as much success. So, can it happen? Can it be done? Sure, but I think going overboard with the transfer portal might maybe not be the best route. You gotta blend it with some recruiting and guys you bring in, through the traditional ways.
That's why for me, these next 2 weeks are maybe the biggest weeks of the Arkansas offseason, because Eric Musselman, look, this team wasn't that great. And a lot of guys disappointed, but if I'm him, I'm trying to find a way to keep as many guys as I can. Um, we already have seen 3 people announce their intention to be in the transfer portal. I'm sure their names are in there by now, and that's Joseph Pinion, Keon Menafield, and Denaje Harris. We can save Denaje Harris eligible conversation for another time. It seems like he is, but so that leaves, and correct me if I miss any names here, but I think that leaves Caleb Battle, Trevin Brazile, Devontae Davis, Layden Blocker, Bay Fall, and Tremont Mark as guys with still some eligibility. Did I miss anybody there, Hutch?
I think that's the list because
I think that's the list.
I think there were 8 guys, not counting Denaje Harris because we all thought he was out of eligibility. I think there were 8 guys that could return, and 2 of those, as you said, have already hit the portal. So I think you listed everybody.
Okay, I mean, really, like you probably need to try and get at least 3 of those guys back. I mean, otherwise, 7, you're gonna have to bring in. You got 2 freshmen coming in; they're highly touted. I mean, Musselman might have to bring in 8 transfers again this year. And hey, it can work, but it's it's a risk. And I think this is a huge kind of stretch here for. I think Devo. It's some quotes he gave to Natty State Sports. It's who were at the NCAA tournament and got good access in the locker room. It sounds like he's gone. Trevin Brazile, for as poorly as this year went, he's still an NBA prospect. You can't teach his combination of size, athleticism, and shooting. He could go or he could transfer elsewhere just after how bad this season's been. But KB, Tremont Mark, like those 2, he's got to find a way to bring them back. And I'm not saying they should come back. I don't know, maybe there's going to be a better opportunity for both of them. It's really, I think all 6 of those guys are kind of coin flip decisions at this point. I think Layden Blocker and Bay Fall should return because I think they got an appropriate amount of opportunities this season. Layden might feel hard pressed because he played pretty well when he did play, but he needed to work on his offensive game. I'm rambling. Anywho, it's a coin flip on those 6 guys. Hutch, do you think any of them are like absolute must bring backs? Is Tremont Mark maybe in that category?
Yeah, I would say Mark and Battle are the 2 most important ones because they're so. I mean, especially down the stretch. It took a while with Battle, but he finally kind of turned the page and was playing defense like Eric Musselman wants him to play. In addition to scoring at an absolute elite level, drawing a lot of fouls, which is something Eric Musselman preaches, and converting at the foul line as well. So I think that those 2 are really big, and I think Lane Blocker is another one that I think is really, really important because, as you said, he needs to work on his offensive game. If he could figure out how to consistently finish at the rim, through contact and everything, that he could be a solid offensive player, but the way he plays defense, I think perfectly fits Eric Musselman's system. He brings great energy. He's an in-state kid. I don't know how much value that you could put in that these days, but to me, I still think there's a lot of value there. Say what you want about Devo Davis, but the guy loves Arkansas, and he was critical. Jalen Williams was critical to success. Moses Moody, those in-state kids are vital, in my opinion, to Arkansas' success. In addition to mixing them with other guys from around the country, which Eric Musselman has done. So I would put Layden Blocker in that category as well. As like if you could get those three guys back, then I feel like you got to feel pretty good about it. Bay Fall would be a bonus at this point, I think, just because he still needs to develop quite a bit, needs to add some muscle for sure, but he has enough athleticism where you see like, okay, there's potential there. So but to me, it's Mark, Battle, and Blocker as the kind of the most important guys to get back.
Yeah, you've convinced me, and you've also I might change my pecking order there and move Blocker above Battle in terms of priority. I mean, KB was sensational to close the year, but I think the type of player that he is, a small guard that's a good scorer and needs work defensively, but can put that work in. There's not really a shortage of those guys in the transfer portal. You're going to see a lot of those type of players, especially coming from the mid-major, smaller schools that want to play on a bigger stage. I think Eric Musselman will have his selection of those types of players. For me, the biggest two needs that the two things must get in the portal this year is he needs to get a point guard and one that is capable of doing everything a little bit. He needs to, be a decent enough shooter. He needs to be a decent enough defender. He needs to be a decent enough passer. I think Ellis just kind of missed the mark on all of those categories. Like he was okay, but not good enough at any one in particular or all of them combined. He finished the year being a pretty good driver and scorer at the basket, but a little too careless defensively and with the ball in his hand. So anyway, a point guard he can rely on, and then just a power forward, a four, a big swing man that can guard other people's. Either he can guard the four or he can guard the three, and he can help on the rebounds because a lot of times this season you had Devontae Davis playing the four, especially when Trevin Brazile was hurt. And even when Trevin Brazile was in the game, he wasn't that physical-minded four. He was kind of a stretch four. This guy doesn't need to be a starter. He could be a bench player, but that's the type of identity that I think is, maybe it's not going to be a flashy and, jump off the box score and winning games, but that's the player that Musselman missed this season with Jordan Walsh leaving and then not replacing anybody close to that kind of talent.
Yeah, and I would also add, like, they're going to need a big man too. Like, they're going to need not just a four, but they're going to need a five because, I mean, you're losing Mekhi Mitchell. I know I was talking with Bob Holt in the press box at Baum-Walker Stadium during the baseball game on Sunday, and I guess Mekhi had told him that he's still got another year of eligibility left, and we're trying to figure out, well, how in the world does that work? And I guess Bob had checked with compliance and the staff and everybody, and they think he's out of eligibility, but maybe he could somehow get a medical red shirt for, I guess there's 1 year where he only played like 7 games. So maybe, but if you lose him, you're losing Jalen Graham. Chandler Lawson is gone. If you can really even consider him that. And then, there's Bay Fall is still out there. Like maybe he comes back, if he comes back and packs on that weight, like I said, maybe he's that guy. But you probably need a more proven veteran guy, big man, to help you as well. So that's another, key thing. So, I mean, yeah, there's lots of pieces they need to go get from the transfer portal.
100%. Yeah, they need a big, and even if Bayfall develops into the projected player, he could be. They need a backup big, and because look, they dealt with their fair share of injuries this year. Every team does, and right now there's not a lot of there. I have no idea. You could tell me all 6 of those guys are coming back, and you could tell me all 6 of them are leaving, and I'd believe either way. And of course, there is the Eric Musselman grumbling, rumors that are still out there about him wanting to take another job. I just, at this point, I don't, we mentioned it before on this podcast. I don't really think there's much more we need to say right now. It's just a little early, but also this, within a matter of days, it could heat up one way or the other. So, Hutch, do you have anything you would like to add on the Eric Musselman situation? My thoughts are, I'm kind of in wait and see mode, and it just, there's been smoke on Twitter and some grumblings and everything, but there haven't really been. No one's really made a legitimate report about it, other than naming him to like a Louisville coaching candidate list or something like that. So for me, it seems a little premature, but something to monitor. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I'll also add, I've seen it kind of making the rounds on social media that I guess Eric Musselman's Instagram account lists just head coach in the bio. And people are like, oh my gosh, is not head coach at Arkansas. What's going on? I mean, well, his Twitter bio still says head coach at the University of Arkansas. I guess his wife's Twitter account is like deactivated or something like that. Danielle Musselman, I don't know. All I know is that we're talking about a grown man here. Okay, we're not talking about a 17-year-old recruit who's changing his bio because he's about to decommit. Like, if Eric Musselman leaves, which he may, I don't think he's going to tease the move by changing his bio on social media, whether that be Instagram or Twitter or whatever. That would just be weird because, again, he's a 59-year-old man who turns 60 years old this year. So don't read too much into that. I know fans like to do that kind of thing, but I would say just sit back and just kind of see how everything unfolds.
Yeah, I want to go on a rant about it, but I'm not going to. I think the more interesting one is his wife
Yeah.
deleting her social media account than any, which I don't know. I'm not saying that's more interesting pertaining to the coaching search, but she has been pretty active, or a potential coaching search, or him leaving. But she's been pretty active on social media for her to delete that. And she's had her issues with, people reaching out to her daughter earlier this year on social media and everything. And she brought that up on Twitter. It just sounds to me like someone that's tired of all the hoopla that comes with Twitter and right now, and taking a break. And that means that Eric's feeling it a little bit too, because they, husband and wife, till death do them part. And for her to delete it, it's a sign that there's a little bit of a loss of, they're frustrated a little bit with it. But that doesn't mean he's leaving. I mean, he sounded very, very motivated to come back. And portal season is here. If we start seeing Arkansas getting commitments, and we start seeing those reports from the Twitter accounts that Arkansas is reaching out to this guy, I mean, that means he's working, whether he's here or not next year. Right now, he's working and trying to make Arkansas better. So I think that's it for basketball. It's going to be an interesting couple months with the transfer portal and who Arkansas gets and brings back and everything. Right now, though, I think we can move on, and the rest of our basketball conversation this week can be about the teams actually playing for a national championship. So, baseball, Hutch, another 4-0 week, right? The Oral Roberts game was this week. Golly,
Yep.
So much has happened. It feels like just things during the week were months ago, but another 4-0 week. They begin SEC play 3-0. They sweep Missouri at home. Really, poor Missouri, man. They didn't have a pulse most of the series. They score one total run across 3 games. Arkansas, it was 14. It was 23-1. They outscored them over the 3. The pitching is terrific, but I have to say I am just over the moon with excitement about this batting lineup right now, because the power is starting to come. The top of the order is starting to produce. I thought Saturday and Sunday, those guys, Peyton Stovall, Vahiva, Aloy, Kendall Diggs, I believe they hit 1, 2, 3 all weekend. And they set the tone for the offense on Saturday and Sunday. They got the back-to-back-to-back home runs in game 2. They jumped on Missouri with a 2-0 lead against their ace on Sunday, who Missouri somehow, with some reason, withheld for the 3rd game. I'm starting to not really have any concerns about the lineup. I would like to see Hudson White get it going a little bit, and Vahiva, Aloy Dave Van Horn has already admitted can be streaky. So maybe this is a hot streak, and the cold streak's going to come at a bad time. But the lineup showed me a lot this weekend, and excited just to see how they follow it up at Auburn next weekend. What about you, Hutch? What was kind of your biggest takeaway from this weekend against Missouri?
Yeah, it's got to be that they produce at the plate. I know 23 runs. They still didn't hit super well, like from a batting average perspective. But whenever you're hitting the ball out of the ballpark, you're scoring runs. They took advantage of Missouri's mistakes. There were a few times where Missouri made an error, and it seemed like every time Arkansas scored. There were a couple of wild pitches in Game 3, and each time there was a wild pitch, it led to a sacrifice fly. Because it moved the guy to third. So to me, it's like, okay, they're an advantageous lineup where maybe they're not going to hit 300 as a team. Maybe it's still like around 250 or something like that. But if they can produce when it matters, that's what you want. Because again, they don't have to score 10 runs for Arkansas to win. They just need to score 5 or 6, and your pitching staff's going to take care of the rest. So that's what I like to see. Again, it's Missouri, so I would like to see it happen against just a decent team. Missouri is not, but that was encouraging to see on opening weekend of SEC play.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I think I'm gonna keep saying it because I think people are underappreciating the season that Kendall Diggs is having. He's just been consistent all year long. He, even when he only has one hit in the game, that hit is usually leads to either he's getting an RBI or he's eventually coming around to score on a run. I think he had a run and an RBI in every single game this series, at least one of each. In game 1, of course, he had 2 runs, 2 RBIs, hit the home run. Just a lot to like, man. They've won 13 straight games. They've won 13 straight games. They're number 1 in the country. But they're about. Dave Van Horn said it yesterday on Sunday after his press conference. To be a great team, you got to go win on the road, and they have not played a true road game yet. We're going to get our first one this weekend against a hungry Auburn team coming off a sweep against Vanderbilt. Hutch, this is my first season covering SEC baseball. Like, is it we want the minimum requirement to be a series win this week? Is that right?
Yeah, I think the minimum requirement, you want to win the series. I think the minimum requirement, the absolute minimum, is you at least win one game. Because Dave mentioned, great teams win on the road. Well, even great teams don't win on the road, because you look back at 2018, the team that came just ever so close to winning a national championship, they didn't win a single road series that year. They would win one game and then lose the other 2. I mean, it was incredible. Like, they'd have Blaine Knight would pitch on Friday, they would win, and then they would lose the next 2 games. It was like clockwork. I've never seen anything like it. So luckily they were basically unbeatable at home. I think they went like 14-1 in SEC games at Baum Walker Stadium that year. So you can make up for it that way, but you have to win at least one game. If that's the key, and if they can win 2, that's even better. Auburn is a good team. They did get swept on the road at Vanderbilt. So they're going to be, hungry and ready to go. They at least were a top 25 team. I don't know if they fell out after getting swept, but that's a tough road series, and none of them are easy. You don't get Missouri on the road, unfortunately, because that would be easy. But you at least need to win 1, and if you can just win 2 just every now and then on the road, then you're setting yourself up to be a top 8 national seed.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's good to hear for what the expectations should be. I think one thing that Arkansas does have this year is, and maybe they've had it in years past, but they're going to have a pitching advantage every single day. Maybe on some Saturdays, Brady Tigert will be on equal footing with who he's going against, because there are some really good Saturday pitchers in the SEC, but Friday night, there's no team in America, or in the SEC, but in America for that matter too, that has a better arm than Hoggin Smith on Friday night. Sure, you can make an argument a couple guys might be equal. I would push back and say no, Hagen's the better guy. But Friday advantage, Saturday, even or an advantage, and then Sunday is an absolute advantage. And I think that's the second thing second biggest thing that I took away from this weekend was good to see Mason Molina bounce back after some struggles the previous week against McNeese State. The 10 strikeouts. However, I do think Dave Van Horn kind of alluded to it in his press conference. He said we were really hoping he could get to 5 innings today. And I thought maybe there would be an expectation of 6, honestly. It seems like Mason might be a guy this all year, whereas like Hoggin, I was really looking forward to seeing him go 6-7, and I had that kind of expectation for Mason as well. But Molina might just be a guy where Arkansas says, our bullpen is so good, you can be a little wild and a little like more reckless, like in the pursuit of those strikeouts and those big like limiting big innings, not letting other teams put the bat on the ball. Because if you go 5 innings, I mean, yesterday they threw Gage Wood and Gabe Gackle for the first time. And those two guys have been, especially Gackle, have been tremendous all year. So maybe Mason Molina is not a guy that's going to eat a lot of innings this year. But if he's going to go 5 innings and give up no runs and just 1 hit for that matter, Arkansas is going to be in a really, really good place all SEC season.
Yeah, that's an incredible Sunday starter. I mean, most places, that guy's starting on Friday nights. Same with Brady Tigert, honestly. And we saw, he started on Fridays at Texas Tech, a solid, very good baseball program that was in the NCAA tournament, won 40 games last year. He was their ace. And I think the great thing about Arkansas, and you mentioned it, is that bullpen. So he doesn't have to go deeper. Like, they probably could have maybe left him in, let him get through the 6th inning, even pitch into the 7th, let that pitch count rise. But why would you? If he's starting to show signs of, getting tired, well, just bring in Cody Frank, bring in, Gabe Gackle or whoever. And so like that's the beauty of it, especially if you could, win game 1 with Hoggin on the mound with your offense producing, if you could win that 8-0 and you can use, Christian Fouch and Cooper Dossett, to close out the game and don't have to use a McIntyre or a Frank or whoever, then you're sitting pretty. So I think that's, even if he just gives you 5 innings, that's great. Because a lot of teams, you're just hoping to get 3 or 4 from your starter, and you're expecting to give up, some runs. With Mason on the mound, you're like, okay, this guy can give us 5 and give up minimal runs, whether that be scoreless or 1 run, whatever. That's a really valuable piece to have, on Sundays.
Yeah, invaluable, and especially when you get to super regionals, Omaha, like other teams. If this pitching depth carries over from what we've seen to start the year, other teams are. There's going to be a point where other teams are like. I like to view kind of the college baseball postseason where like teams have, let's say, 8 pitchers. Where are they in that pitcher line? Like by the time you get to game 3, like is Arkansas at their 4th best pitcher, or 5th best pitcher out of the bullpen because they've been able to save other arms, and the opponents at their 7th or 8th. And I think that's going to happen this season, just because of the starter depth. But a lot of that's going to start with Hagen Smith going deep on Fridays. And I've said it, I'll be a broken record all year. It was great to see him go 6 on Friday night against Missouri. I think he's got even more left in the tank. I'm not going to be surprised when he makes it 7 or 8 at some point in the near future. Before we move on to maybe some football nuggets, take a quick break and then move on to some spring football stuff. I think we got to mention Ross Lovich and Nolan Souza, 2 guys, as Hutch so brilliantly wrote in a story this week, that were unexpected sources of offense. I think those were the words, but those 2 were really not expected to be starters. They were expected to be more utility guys. Souza, maybe not even a utility guy, just a freshman learning this year. Lovich to be maybe a rotational piece in the outfield. I think they're both key cogs. And for now, I know Souza didn't have the greatest Saturday and Sunday, but when the rest of the lineup's producing like they are right now, he can kind of stay in the 7-8 spot and be a potential power bat from the left side. I think you'll still see Dave maybe rotate when they go against left-handed pitchers because he did struggle a little bit there this weekend. But shout out to those two guys for just working themselves into the lineup is all I've got to say, Hutch. I mean, you covered this team more than me in the preseason. Neither of them looked good, right? I mean, they
No,
were not good in the preseason, right?
no. Nolan Souza just looked overwhelmed, and that's not uncommon for a freshman. Even though he was a top 100 recruit, whatever. Like I think he had like 44 at bats between the fall and preseason. I think he struck out in 24, something like that. Like over half his at bats, and so I was like, okay, this guy, he's good. He could develop into something, but he's not going to play a whole lot. And there he is starting on SEC opening day and hits 2 home runs. I mean, that's remarkable. Maybe it's just that he couldn't handle Arkansas's pitching, which who can blame him? So, and Ross Lovich, I think he maybe had an injury he was dealing with in the fall, which maybe contributed to it. I think I wrote about it, like, okay, maybe he could, but I didn't really, even though I wrote it, I didn't really believe it. I was like, yeah, I'll just throw this in there. And lo and behold, the season's come around, and all he does is, like, when he's in the lineup, he gets 2 hits and scores a run, drives one in, and so he's been incredibly productive. I am very, very surprised, even though he's done it in the SEC before at Missouri, but still, it was pretty surprising to see that kind of him emerging as maybe your starting left fielder.
Yeah, and the competition rages on because I know Jason Jones will be hungry for at-bats, Will Edmondson hungry for at-bats, and Wilmsmeyer, it seems like Arkansas still wants him to be the guy in center field. He just has struggled offensively, so Lovich is getting some reps there in center. But Wilmsmeyer did start 2 games this weekend against Missouri. So, all right, let's leave it there for baseball. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss the second week of spring football, what we've seen from Sam Pittman and them boys. So we will be right back. All right, we're back, and let's talk about the second week of spring football practices. Hutch, not to put you on blast, he was not there for Thursday. We got to go inside the stadium, full pads. Petrino brought out some classic Bobby Petrino yelling, as so I've been told that we saw a little bit of the old Bobby. Hutch not there for personal reasons, a personal absence, but you know, you were there Tuesday. I thought Tuesday was a pretty interesting day, just seeing them coming out of a closed session Saturday. What have you we talked about maybe some first impressions last week, Hutch, and we talked a lot about the quarterback battle. One thing I will say right off the bat is we still haven't seen anybody other than Taylon Green get like real consistent work with the number ones. I'm inclined to say that quarterback competition is over, but what I will say, and we can start here, is Malachi Singleton has by far been the second most impressive quarterback. It hasn't been Jacoby Criswell, who I think we all expected to be the top competition for Taylon Green. It's been Malachi, and I think there's a real good chance we're going to enter the season this year with Malachi as the number 2 over Jacoby Criswell.
Yeah, based on what I've seen, I think you're exactly right. That's what I saw on Tuesday. Now, granted, Tuesday was not a great day for the quarterbacks by any means. It was pretty rough. Now, to be fair, I think there was some times where it was an outdoor practice. It was a little bit windy that day. I think that maybe affected, especially Malachi. I remember there was a team period where he was throwing right into the wind. Now, is that why he threw an interception right to a safety where the safety sat there and caught it like a punt? Probably not. But I mean, really, that was Malachi's probably worst throw of the day. But other than that, he was okay, much better than the other quarterbacks, even Taylon Green, I would say. So he's definitely been the second best quarterback in my opinion. I think he's got an incredibly high ceiling. We still really haven't even seen him do anything with his legs, just because you don't really see any of the quarterbacks do anything with their legs in spring ball because they can't be touched. I mean, they do run and everything like that, but the defense has been told not to really touch them at all. So hard to really know what they can do in that aspect of the game, but I really like what I've seen from Malachi. I think he's improved a lot from last year to this year, and I think that's what you want to see from a young guy like that.
Yeah. I think I would love to see him get some reps with the ones, man. Because I'll say this about Taylon Green: he has made some really impressive plays. Thursday, there was a moment. I posted the video on my Twitter. If anyone wants to scroll back through all the baseball updates and find it, he's rolling to his left on a play action, throwing across his body, hits Isaiah Satania about 30, 40 yards down the field in stride, and Satania takes it the rest of the way for about a 60-yard touchdown. And it was just like, whoa. Look, KJ Jefferson, I don't know if that's a throw he could have made rolling to his left. KJ had a great deep ball, but a lot of the times it was either rolling to his right or already in the pocket. That was special. He has like moments where he's hitting receivers across the middle, Talon, where there's like just that right amount of zip on the fastball that it gets there and prevents a defensive, linebacker or a nickelback from getting there and breaking up the play. But he has been a little inconsistent at times. You saw it especially Tuesday. On Thursday, he threw an end zone interception to Jalen Braxton, who, by the way, is having a tremendous spring. I would just like to see Malachi get in there and see how it compares, because I think there's got to be the biggest weakness I think of this Arkansas team this year is there is a lack of depth. I think the twos have potential, but they definitely don't have the resume that a lot of the starters had. And there's just some big question marks among the backups. So seeing Malachi go against the number twos every day is obviously an easier task than Talon going against the ones. And I'm sure Sam sees it and they feel like they don't need to see it, but selfishly, the journalists, I think we'd like to see Malachi go against the ones. But hey, if Talon Green's a guy, Talon Green's a guy. And I think that's a good thing for Arkansas football to have found the guy and not need a quarterback competition. As excited as I was for maybe a QB1 battle this year.
Yeah, I'd like to see Malachi go against the ones just because that probably means he's going with the ones on offense too. I don't think he's really gotten to throw the ball to Andrew Armstrong and Tyrone Broden, who, at least through the practices that I saw, they were clearly the top 1-2 guys at receiver. He's not throwing the ball to Luke Has, which I guess he got dinged up before or during the practice on Thursday. So he hasn't been throwing to the top guys. He's been throwing to, I'm trying to think of who. I mean, that tells you. I mean, it's hard to remember who all the number two receivers. I know he's been throwing to Varkey's Gums a lot, tight ends. Yeah. So it's not the same. The offensive line isn't as good, although that's not necessarily as big of a deal with the way these practices are set up. So I would like to see him run with the ones just to see kind of how he does. Plus, it'd be good to get him that little experience because who knows? I mean, Talon Green could get hurt. Even if he's the clear, obvious number one guy, their injuries happen. And you want him to have that experience. And this is the time to get that experience, is in the spring. So I would like to see, and I hope that we see it at some point. But yeah, maybe it's just a matter of, hey, they know Talon Green's the guy and they're giving him every possible rep just so they can build that chemistry.
Which is a good strategy. It really is. If Talon Green's a guy, build up that chemistry, give him those reps. All in on this year, finding a way to get to bowl eligibility, 6 wins. I think the more I've watched this team in the spring, I don't think that they're going to be an 8-win team in the SEC. I think there are too many holes. They're like an injury away from being in a crisis at a couple positions. But the offense is going to be better. The offense, I mean, there's not really anywhere they can go but up. Shout out to Dan Enos, but the offense is going to be better. And a couple nuggies from Thursday that I've got, my 2 biggest takeaways were Davion Dozier is ready to play. I mean, he's a guy I'd like to see go up against Jalen Braxton and some of the ones starting moving forward. I mean, he just had a terrific week of spring ball. He made a great one-handed catch in the end zone, but he does the Isaac TeSlaa thing of making contested catches, and he has that ability to get separation down the field and be a burner at times. He was great, and then the run game looked a lot better. I mean, we've said it all spring and like that. Oh, there's some holes during fastball or these inside zone drills that we didn't really see, especially in the fall last year. Well, that carried over to 11 on 11. And there were times where the defense got the best of the offensive line and negative plays and everything. But when they did a red zone drill and the running game really was able to assert some dominance and push the pile and be consistent. I mean, I think there was one situation, it might have been the second team offense, where it was first and goal from the 9, and they called 3 straight runs, and they scored. They punched it in. I think it was freshman Braylon Russell that punched it in. The running game looks better, and I think the offensive line is going to be better. And as a byproduct of that, this will not be one of the worst offenses of any Power 5 team this year. So that's I mean, how much better would Arkansas have been last year with an average offense, Hutch? I mean, the sky is the limit for this team now, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like if Bobby Petrino was the offensive coordinator last year, they would have been so much. They would have made a bowl at least, in my opinion. I mean, they were already close in a lot of those losses, so I think that would have made a huge difference. And I will add, I will echo your assessment of Davion Dozier because he was also incredible on Tuesday. He every time, I mean, he made a really nice catch where he went up and caught it over a defender. He had another, several other plays where he, got open and made the catch. There were a couple other kind of really nice catches he made. So it just seemed like he caught a lot of passes on Tuesday. So that's really good to see from a second-year guy. And plus, he also passes the eye test. I mean, you look at that guy like, oh yeah, that looks like an SEC wide receiver. So it would be nice to have him kind of step up and be a guy they can count on, in addition to the Tyrone Broden and Andrew Armstrong.
Yeah, for sure. We'll close with this. My one biggest question left of spring that's not quarterback related. How about that? I'll go first, and you can have some time to think. But I am fascinated to see what happens with the secondary. I think Jalen Braxton and Snacks Johnson are locked in starters. Braxton's the number 1 outside corner, and Snacks is the nickel or the hog corner. The returners have gotten most of the reps with the ones through the first couple weeks of the spring. So that would be either Jaheim Singletary or Keon Stewart at the second corner, and then the safeties have been Jaden Johnson and Hudson Clark. Arkansas brought in 3 very talented might be a stretch. 3 guys through the transfer portal that when they got them, I think a lot of people expected, oh, that's a starter or at least a very impactful piece. That's Marquise Robinson at corner from South Alabama, Danico Slaughter from Tennessee, and Miguel Mitchell from Florida. And those 2 guys can kind of float between corner and safety. I'm just interested to see, as when we get to the end of spring, who's working with the ones. Is it still the returnees, and maybe that competition rolls over to the fall, or do some of the newcomers maybe pass them on the depth chart? I really don't know the answer. I don't have a preference. I thought, Jaden Johnson and Hudson Clark, there were times last year they really struggled, but there were times where they were 2 very important players to a good SEC defense. So, I'm fascinated by that position battle. That's my biggest question the rest of the way. What about you, Hutch?
Yeah, I'll flip it to the other side of the ball. We've talked about it a little bit already, but the wide receiver spot, kind of how that pecking order kind of sorts itself out. Like, does Davion Dozier climb that pecking order? And then if he does, how do they mix that up? Because, I mean, I don't think Andrew Armstrong, Tyrone Broden, or Davion Dozier, any of those guys are really a true slot receiver. And so to get all 3 of them on the field at once may not be something they could do, but maybe he can be a rotational guy. Does Isaiah Satania lock down the starting slot receiver spot? I'm very curious to see how all that plays out. I will say, I don't know how he looked on Thursday, but on Tuesday, our first look at Jordan Anthony, the speedy wide receiver transfer from Texas A&M, did not really impress me. He may be faster than a speeding bullet, but I think catching the ball is still a little bit of an adventure. He likes to use his body. He likes to catch it with his body, which you want to catch with your hands at this level. And so maybe it was just a bad day. I don't know. We'll see kind of how he looks throughout the rest of spring. That's another guy to kind of keep an eye on. So, and, do they have enough guys to where they don't try to go get somebody else through the transfer portal as well? That's another key thing to kind of watch and see how it develops at that position.
Yeah. Sam Pittman said at some point, one of his press conferences last week, that he wants to have 9 receivers that he trusts in the offense, not only just special teams and stuff, but 9 receivers in the offense that he trusts. I would say right now he's probably got about 5 that 100% trust. And there's potential to make that 9 really quickly. But I don't put Davion Dozier in that bracket right now because he's still working with the 3s pretty much. I don't put CJ Brown, a freshman, in that bracket yet. And honestly, I don't know if I put Tesla in that bracket just yet. Just based off it hasn't popped really. I would say Armstrong, Broden, Satania, Wilson, he trusts. So that's 4, not even 5. Like maybe you do put Tesla in there. But anyways, can he get to 9? I think he can at the end of the year. And I don't see them getting a wide receiver in the portal. I think they have too many other needs and too many receivers on the roster. But hey, those receivers need to have a better year than they did last year. That's for sure. So all right, Hutch, anything else from you? Any other, we'll mention real quick, the Arkansas women's basketball team is in the WBIT, the first ever edition of that tournament, going on the road to play Tulsa. Really rough close to the year for Mike Neighbors and that team. Maybe they can get a little, have a little positivity coming into the offseason with a run here. But that's it for me. I don't have anything else burning on your mind about Arkansas sports before we head into a new week, a week of spring break, if you will?
Yeah, I can't really provide much analysis on these things, but a couple of shout outs. We failed to mention last week that the women's track team won a national championship. So credit to them. They get that done. A couple other women's sports are going really well right now. The gymnastics team posted its first ever 198 score in their most recent meet. So credit to them. And then also the softball team, I know, opened up SEC play this past weekend as well. They took 2 of 3 at Auburn. I think they lost a 1-run, I think 2-1 on the game 3. They'd already clinched the series, but really good to see them get off to a hot start in SEC play as well. So the women's sports, I know the women's basketball team kind of struggled as you mentioned, but in general, the women's sports are rolling right now.
Yeah, and baseball season is in full gear with the number 1 team in the country. They'll face Auburn Thursday through Saturday this week. Just healthy reminder that the series starts a day early. I think they go 3 straight series, maybe Thursday through Saturday coming up. So, which is awesome. Nice to have a Sunday off. Looking forward to that. But Hutch, thank you as always for joining me, man. Enjoy a week with no on-campus sporting events. I will see you later rather than sooner, I guess, for the first time. But take it easy, man. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much to everybody for listening to the latest episode of Hoggin the Mic. We will be back next Monday recapping the baseball team's weekend series against Auburn and probably some basketball portal movement by then. So keep it locked in here on your podcast channels. We'll talk to y'all soon.